What does it mean if you raise your shoulder up and it's clicking? What is that? Well, my name is Dr. Story. I've been a chiropractor for over 26 years. I'm going to give you realistic advice based on my experience and based on the scientific literature. So let's talk about this clicky shoulder that you have. It could be a number of things, and it's very difficult to figure it out on YouTube, but I'm going to give you some guidelines that I have used in my practice to help you, so maybe my experience can help you decipher which one it is. Let's discuss, you raise your shoulder up and you get these clickings. Sometimes it could be, number one, the bicep tendon. So the bicep tendon comes in the top of your shoulder in right here, and it attaches to a part of your shoulder where it can actually kind of go over an edge. The groove of one of the tendons of the bicep, it kind of sits in a groove like this, and sometimes it can kind of flip over a little bit if there's been ligament damage. And a lot of times just using some ultrasound or cold laser therapy, deep tissue massage, and I find adjusting the shoulder helps really well. And very often the person will go, oh, that feels better, and the clicking kind of stops once the inflammation goes down. Now, the second thing it might be is a rotator cuff tear. The rotator cuff consists of 4 separate muscles, but I'm going to say 99% of the time it's a muscle called the supraspinatus. That's a muscle that's on top of your shoulder here. And this is a little bit difficult because if it's a complete tear of your rotator cuff, the real clue is going to be the person's going to try to raise their arm and they're going to feel clicking, but they won't be able to get past much 90 degrees here. And then when you try to apply some pressure to their arm, usually it just weakens and they'll feel a click. That's with a complete tear. And that's more obvious. But a partial tear, which is a small tear of the muscle, is a little bit more difficult because the person will be able to raise it. And if you get to about that 90 degrees and you push down, very often they'll compensate by hiking their shoulder up or maneuvering their body to not allow the clicking to occur. But if you do it in a strict fashion, very often I can test it and it'll show weak and it'll click. That's a little bit more difficult to fix because the problem is most surgeons are simply not going to do surgery on a partial tear. Think of the muscle as this. Think of my fingers as the muscle. Now, a partial tear would be part of the muscle is torn. See how now it's just torn in between my 2 first fingers. A complete tear would be the muscle is totally separated. So what they would do is they would go in and stitch it back in. But there's a long recovery process with this, and the success rate is not always fantastic. So if it's just a partial tear where a couple fibers are torn, but the majority of the fibers are still there, most good surgeons are not going to do surgery on that because the risk of causing more harm from the surgery is not worth the benefit of saving a couple fibers. So what you do with the partial tear is you want to strengthen the muscles around the area and then strengthen the actual supraspinatus muscle itself. So I have a number of exercises on my YouTube channel. You just have to look them up. Just type in rotator cuff or shoulders in the little search function on my channel and you'll see all those exercises I normally prescribe to patients. A lot of times it's band pull-aparts in a specific way that unloads the supraspinatus. There are exercises to do where you will actually help the stability of your shoulder, so you could look at those. I won't put a link at the end. Just use the search function. That's the easiest way to do it. Now, the third and final thing that very often causes clicking is the person will raise their shoulder and it'll mimic a partial tear of a rotator cuff. They'll get a little weakness, but they'll get a click, and it's very uncomfortable, and that is what's called a torn labrum. Now, the labrum is on the scapula, and it kind of surrounds the surface and gives a little more depth so that the shoulder itself can sit in there. But the bicep tendon attaches to it as well as it's part of the capsule. And very often throwing athletes, people that throw a football or a baseball, third baseman, outfielder, those types of things, those types of people can tear their labrum, as well as simply old age. Also, people that will fall down, they trip and fall, put their arm out, they can tear their labrum. This is a more complex problem. There's debate on whether surgery is the right answer. I have personally found that if a person gives themselves about 6 months of rehab, that 8 out of 10 people can avoid surgery. There's always people that are going to need surgery, but what does a clicking shoulder mean? It's not as simple as it's just one thing. It could be a number of things, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how to decipher what your particular problem might be. The best solution would be to have someone examine you, as well as maybe send you for an MRI, because ultimately that would give you the best idea of what could possibly be wrong with your shoulder.